am Darren Rudkin from The Mind at Work. I'm here at my home today to film the latest in our Purposeful Work series, and today I'm going to be meeting Peter Blakemore, who is a third generation family business owner of A.F Blakemore, which is a large retail company here in the UK, one of the top 50 family businesses here in Britain. And I think one of the things I'm interested in about this interview is, long before it became popular, Peter has been running a multi-stakeholder approach to running his business. So we're going to learn today, I hope, some things about how he has run a business very specifically for the benefit of not just the shareholders, but also the customers, the staff, and the communities in which his businesses operate. So come with me, and we're going to learn something from someone who's been a leader for 60 years in the world of multi-stakeholder business management. So come with me. Thanks, Peter. Really, thanks for coming over and doing this interview. I thought it'd be interesting for the audience to just start off by hearing about a bit about your life, you know, who you are, and you're just saying to me you're 79 years old. You have been in a family business for most of your life. So do you want to just give us a sort of top, the sort of headline, so we get the arc of your life that people can tune into?
Yeah, well, I was born in 1943. After school, they didn't have business schools or anything too fancy then, but I did economics and accountancy at Leeds University, and finished in July, on something like the 2nd of July, and started work on the 3rd, so in the family business, and been there ever since. And it was a great year to have started and been around and joined the business in the early 60s. The world was changing a lot. Rock and roll was just about invented then, and it was a different place, and the politics were changing, attitudes towards society and business, those were changing very rapidly as well. So I grew up, I said, in the 40s and 50s, joined the business in the 60s, and when you think back, it's astonishing to think that we didn't have any technology at all, really. We had one typewriter, and that was all there was in the business. So every calculation had to be done by in your head or written longhand, and all of the accounting had to be done in the same way. So it was a very small business then. We only had about 20 people in 1964 when I joined the business.
So you joined in 64, so that's almost 60 years you've been in the business.
Yeah.
60 years. I mean, it takes something to say that, 60 years in a business which has actually got your name above the shop.
Yeah.
But it existed before then. I mean, do you want to just give us a short history of Blakemore's and when it started? And
Well, Blakemore's was started by my grandfather, so I'm 3rd generation in the company. My father joined the business in the 1930s. So it started off as a small grocery store in Wolverhampton, run by my grandmother, actually. So we're quite matriarchal as a business in our attitudes and how it works. So our grandfather joined the business probably early 1920s. And then my father joined that in the mid to late 20s. It was still a very small, traditional wholesale grocery business. Had some shops on the side as well, and we grew steadily until 1944, when we had an attack from incendiary bombs, which destroyed the whole lot. So father came back and started the business again.
Right.
So when I joined the business, it was in the early 60s. We just had 25 people. Turnover was about £700,000 or £800,000 a year, and we had net assets of £11,000.
I'm amazed you can remember all this, Peter.
Oh, well, I happened to look it up the other day. was doing an introduction to a course yesterday.
Yeah.
So I looked these numbers up, but you know, they're sort of there.
Yeah.
And I think I was enticed to join the business. The company was worth 11,000, and father made a great investment.
Yeah.
He said, join the business and I'll get you a Mini Cooper.
That was the enticement.
That was the deal, and so I got a Mini Cooper
when
I was 21, and
Okay.
it was fantastic. So joined the business and thoroughly enjoyed it ever since.
Yeah.
Over the years it's changed a lot. We've sort of grown quite a lot now, so that we've got 7,000 people. We've got turnover of £1.3 billion now, and our net assets now just under £100 million. So we've had good steady growth over the years up until now.
That's quite a story. I mean, are you one of Britain's biggest family businesses?
We're certainly sort of within probably the top 50, I would think. There are surveys, and I don't exactly know the number, but we sort of...
That's not something you researched before you got it, but you're one of the top 50 businesses.
Something like that, family-owned businesses, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we sort of keep going up every year as a lot of competitors get bought out and disappear amongst either corporates or private equity or something like that. So we've managed to keep going. I'm third generation. I'm pleased to say I've got 4 more Blakemores in the business now. Yeah. So three of my kids and a daughter-in-law. Yeah. So all 4 of them are working hard in the business, and looking forward to them sort of growing and maturing as the business carries on growing. Yeah.
And then being the 4th generation then of Blakemores to run the business.
Yes,
I mean, and can you say in that 60 years, you know, when I met you, was it maybe about 15 years ago?
It was, yeah.
I mean, you were obviously CEO then. I mean, how long were you CEO of Blakemores?
Well, we didn't do job descriptions when I started, you know, so...
But you were the boss, whether there was a job
description. Well, I sort of took over, you know, father was running the business. Yeah. And he had particular interests in buying and in trading. So I joined it with a background of accountancy. So I spent a lot of time trying to get a handle on the numbers. So when I first joined the business, it was a small family business. Its purpose was quite different then. Yeah. However, we'd go and see our accountant once a year, usually about 6 months after the financial year ended. Yeah. And we go and sit in his office, and he'd say, right, here are the results, and he'd tell us whether we made a profit or not. You know, so that really wasn't any great way to run a business. So I sort of concentrated on changing that. Father was very interested in the buying side of things, and my mother was also involved in the business, and she was running the delivered warehouse.
Okay.
So, well, there are only 20 odd of us. So
So only and several of your family in there, just as it is today, except they're diluted amongst several thousand people.
Yeah, there's mother, father, and me then. Yeah. But the purpose of the business changed dramatically over the years. So it started off as a...
Sorry, I'm interrupting because obviously we're here to talk about purpose. I mean, before you get into talking about that original purpose, as you remember, I'm just curious about, because it is a family business. Yeah. What did you pick up from these important parental figures in your life? You know, your mum, your dad, your grandfather, your grandmother, they're all in the business. What did you pick up about what mattered? You know, what mattered to them, or what mattered to the business that they were running? Did you get any messages at that young age?
Well, I think the most important thing for the business was that we were very small. We had some very, very big and well-financed competitors. We were the third largest wholesaler in Wolverhampton when this is food wholesaler when I joined the business. Yeah. So it was very, very small local business. So that changed a lot. But the most important thing, I think, were the people that worked there, and that I got to know everybody working in the business from a very early age. So I used to love going out on the trucks making deliveries to the customers. I mean, they're only small trucks, not much bigger than a transit van really. But we used to get out and about, and I used to go and meet the customers and go and help with the deliveries, or work in the warehouse helping assemble orders and getting those sorted out. Yeah.
So that sense in a small business of putting your hand into a lot of different things, you're looking at the numbers, you're getting in the vans, you're making the deliveries, you're talking to your dad about buying. I mean, I imagine you had to fit your fingers in a lot of different pies. But I'm just curious about, when I was asking you, what did you learn mattered? You started off by talking about people, and but you mentioned two different types, if you like. One, there's the people who were in your business, not very many, so you got to know them, but also you're out in the vans meeting customers. I mean, was that really in the spirit of the company back then about the importance of people?
Yeah, I think customer service was important, really important then, in that we had very big competitors that were, hundreds and hundreds of times our size of resource and buying power. But we actually survived because we went along to small independent retailers. And the market was different then. Like independent shops probably had 40-50% of the market, or even more in those days. Whereas today, the multiple grocers, the big operators, they've got sort of high 90s now share of the market. So the world was a different place then. Suppliers, we used to buy from all the major manufacturers, but or some of them, should I say, in that a lot of them dealt direct with independent retailers and the customer, and the wholesale trade was only growing in its infancy. And I remember when some of the massive multinational companies then, people like Cadbury's, they used to deliver direct into every outlet where their products were sold in. And it didn't make sense. So the wholesale business model succeeded because we could just make one delivery from multiple different manufacturers, and that helped the business a lot.
So I want to ask you this question, Peter, because I mean, Blakemore's is here today. Like you say, it's one of the top 50 family businesses. It's in the retail sector, which during your lifetime has massively concentrated, as you say, from a very diverse world in the 60s when you joined to now these major players, huge competitors you've got, of multiples bigger than you, with buying power bigger than you. And, you said you started off, you were the third biggest in Wolverhampton. And I'm imagining through that 60 years, a lot of your competitors have been bought or have perished along the way. But here you are, you're still going in 2023 in this, one of the most competitive sectors, in the UK business. And I'm just curious about, maybe you've been asked this question, what do you think accounts for Blakemore, surviving all that time and still being able to thrive and to, do what you do? You serve many customers, you employ many staff, you contribute a lot to the communities you're in. What do you attribute that to? Because most back in the day in the 60s have long gone.
I would say that the biggest factor is that what's driven the business and what we've been interested in as a family, and family business values are very different to most of our PLC competitors, whose only interest really, I think, is the bottom line, how much profit they can make for their shareholders. Now, that's been important to us, but it's not been our number one motivator over the years to maximise the profit. If in fact that is what I'd have been interested in, then I'd have retired a long time ago and stopped working a long time ago. But I enjoy working in the business, I enjoy the people, I enjoy the challenge. So I found that very satisfying personally, and it has enabled us to grow and survive because we've had different values. You only have to look at what happens every year now in food retailing and wholesaling, and our competitive mindset changes every year as the big companies buy each other out and they sell to private equity, and then they go public again, and then they sell again to someone, and they get bigger and bigger, and so we are involved in a very large scale market with these sorts of companies. But I think that we've hung around for a long time because of our family business nature of the company.
I mean, you were saying earlier to me that the purpose of the business has changed over, of course, as it would over. What do you recall of the original purposes of the business and how it was expressed and how that's moved? And could you speak to that?
Yeah. I think when the business was first started over 100 years ago, it was started really by my grandmother as something to do in terms of to help with the family finances, and the retail shop grew, and on top of that, the wholesaling side grew. And there's a story saying that grandfather went out, he joined the business, and he bought a huge quantity of paper bags from the mill, and this filled the house up where they lived in, and so grandfather had no choice but to go and sell them to other retailers. However, he bought those paper bags at a really good price, and so he sold them to other traders in Wolverhampton
At a better price,
and made a profit out of it, and that's how we became wholesalers, really. Yeah. But the purpose of the business really was, I think, particularly my father. He wanted to be his own boss. He didn't want to work for someone else. He wanted to have his own business, and the same thing would be true for my grandfather as well. They wanted to become or be their own masters of their own destiny and do what they wanted to do. So that was very important. And I think up until maybe I joined the business in the 60s, the business was seen as a source of family income as well. That's what you had to live off. Yeah. So the profits, or any profits that we made, they were there to give the family a good standard of living. Nothing too much, but it was very nice. We had a caravan, and we used to go to France and Wales, and this was in the early 50s, and that was quite something in those days. And so we were very, very fortunate that we were able to have a good standard of living from the business. And then I think that started to change in the 60s, in that our competitors were just so much bigger than us. We were able to take advantage of some big changes in the marketplace of Blakemore's in the 60s and 70s. Self-service wholesaling, and that's known as cash and carry now, started to grow. Father saw, he went to Western Germany and saw this concept there, which he thought would be a good idea. You could, if you could get your customers to come in to your warehouse and walk around the warehouse and assemble all the goods that they wanted and pay cash for them, and then take them back to their shop in their own car or van, that was a really big change in the business model. And so we were fortunate to be part of that. And then we grew from there. However, at the time, I think that we realised, and I realised, that we had to compete and survive against companies that were very, very, very much bigger than we were. So growth was always important to us, and still is. So we managed to grow the business, and then because we're a family business, we need to produce the profits to reinvest in the business to continue growing again. So that's the model that we've kept with ever since, and that we grow our own profits now, and we do need to compete against some the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's and the Asda's and the Morrisons and the Co-ops of this world. There's people
and the Aldi's and the Lidl's.
And the Aldi's and Lidl's as well now.
Yeah. So if I'm tracking you right, you're saying that, when the business started, there were quite sort of straightforward purposes to support the family. I guess a motivation to be your own boss. I mean, that's a purpose, isn't it? To have, that's the classic entrepreneurial drive. So that was very present in your grandparents, to have that, be their own boss. So these were the initial purposes, to support the family. You even said, well, to have something to do, which, that's quite a core purpose, isn't it? To have something useful to do with yourself. And then as the business went forward, there became more of a purpose to grow and to create a sustaining model where you're growing and you're reinvesting the profits so that you can keep growing, and that became the sort of engine of a purpose in its own right.
Yeah.
And how did that evolve then? Because as you became bigger, I mean, I know you've been engaged in, creating company purpose and and communicating that to larger and larger numbers of people as the business has grown. Can you talk about that part of the journey?
Yeah, well, the first part was sort of self-service, wholesaling, cash and carry growth, and then in the late 70s, early 80s, convenience retailing started in the UK, and I remember that in those days the average local shop run by an independent retailer, they close on one afternoon a week. They have early closing day, and Saturday would normally be an early closing day as well. They'd just open until lunchtime, and almost nobody traded on a Sunday then. So we then, through our SPAR connections, we then became involved in convenience retailing, and we had some very rapid growth through the early 80s and 90s. In the 90s, we managed to start buying more and more small stores. All of our competitors were only really interested in the big box retail, and they all felt that they had to open up giant shops that sold everything from food to clothing to household goods and everything. And so that was where they were going to get their growth from. And they were selling off and closing all of their smaller stores. So we were able to buy quite a lot of these in the late 80s and early 90s. And we developed our company-owned store division, and we've got nearly 300 now. So over this period of time, to come back to your point exactly, is that we had a big growth in the numbers of people that worked in the business. We've always believed in promoting people from within the business, but our growth was rapid, so that we took on a lot of senior management in the company in particular that came to us from other operators. And so probably then by the 1990s, we had a real mishmash of management styles and cultures and ways that the business was run. And we then started to look a lot more, well, what is our corporate, how are we going to run things? And that's when we, just 15 years ago, we had a big change in the business. We wanted to establish really what was important to us. So we came up with, we decided, and we did a lot of work on what we call the Blakemore way. And this was in 2008, would you believe? It was only 15 years ago, but it seems like forever, I've got to say. However, 2008, we came up and we devised the Blakemore way, and we put down what our purpose and what we felt that we were there for, and we put the 5 values for the business, and that worked extremely well for us, and we were able to identify this is exactly what we stood for, and it struck a chord, I think, with a lot of people that worked in the business. And then we moved on after that, and this is where we got involved with Mind at Work. We soon realised that we'd had mission statements, and we'd done things like quality first, and things that you put behind your desk on a plaque on the wall, and and in those days, well, it's on the wall now, it's job done, isn't it? But it wasn't. And how we got involved with Mind at Work then is that we wanted to actually make sure what happened and what happened in the business matched with what we said that our purpose and values were. And so that's when we started a very big program over the years to train our staff and to tell them and to promote our business purpose and values. And that's certainly been there in the last 15 to 20 years.
Well, thanks for giving us that arc. Let me just see if I can play it back, Peter, because there's a lot in what you've said. So you start off with this family business with these very sort of humble purposes in a way about supporting the family and, you know, being masters of your own destiny as a family. And then the company has these family values in it, which is about, you know, of course, making a profit, but looking after people. Customer service is very important. And so you grow, and then you ride these two big waves. You get in quite early with the cash and carry wave, and that's sources a phase of growth. And then you get into this convenience store. You know, you're one of the early players in that, and that, you know, you start getting into that. That again is another impetus to growth. And so then you come into the 21st century, and then suddenly, you know, you've got this big but quite disparate structure with different people, different management styles, different leadership in the midst of it. And then you decide coming towards 2008, you decide that something needs formalizing, something needs expressing in a way. Am I reading you right so far? So you come into saying, okay, well, actually we're going to express what our purpose is and our values. And then once you've done that, you then say, actually, that's not enough. Having them on the wall is not enough. How do we live these day to day? And that becomes the sort of recent history of the company and where we've been involved with Mind at Work with you.
That's right.
So as we look at that big arc, I'm curious, when you encapsulated the purpose, do you think you created it, or do you think you just found words that described what you already did? What was already the purpose in the company?
I'd say the second one is that it was what we'd always done. It was a family business ethos, really, and we were too busy running the business to some extent to even think about these things in those days. Certainly, sort of in the 70s and 80s, we were just rushing around, growing the business. Certainly, the one thing I didn't mention is that sales growth was always important to us, in that we were a very small customer of some very big, multinational food manufacturers. So you got all of the, the Heinz's, the Cadbury's, and all of these very, very big food manufacturers. And so we felt that we needed to grow as well at the time. And that's why we were always interested in the business, in change, and anything that we felt could enable us to grow and take a bigger share of the market. So I say the family values were there, but allied to these other events caused us to set up the Blakemore way, and then leading the Blakemore way. And we had a fair mixture of stuff, and we'd have people there that would run the business. The words would be on the wall behind them, and they'd have people working for them, and they'd say, I don't care what it says in those on the wall there anymore. Or what matters is I'm the boss here. I'm in charge of you, and you'll do what I want you to do. And there was very much that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there was very much a command and obey sort of management style and structure that went through the whole of business and industry in the country then. And again, that's changed over the particularly the last 20 years, I think, in that everybody's become much more inclusive. Their opinions are valued. We value diversity and things like that. So that's changed as well.
But I think you're speaking very simply about that challenge of, it's one thing to capture an ethos and to give it names like the Blakemore Way and leading the Blakemore Way, which you've done. But you're saying, actually, in a granular level or on the ground, there's something more needed when there's a leader there who's still living out of an attitude or a mindset of saying, well, you do what I say, I'm the boss. So in that way, there's that relationship, isn't there, between the purpose statement, which used to be called the mission statement, and sometimes it's just a change of words, isn't it? It's like they're the same thing. There's that, which we sometimes call in our world the sort of big purpose, or being purpose-led as an organisation. But then the actual behaviour underneath it, and being purposeful, actually living purpose in the day-to-day. And those two things don't, they're in relationship with each other. I mean, what have you learned about that as you've...
Okay, well, I think purpose has remained pretty much constant over the last 15 to 20 years.
This one, the sort of purpose.
The big one at the top.
And do you want to tell us what it is?
Yeah, I mean, if I can get the words out exactly, our purpose is to grow a family business in ways that are profitable and sustainable for the benefit of staff, customers, and the community. That's it. And then underneath that purpose, we've got values, and we started off with 5 values. And those were things like how important people are, customer service, acting with honesty and integrity, and so there are 5 values that sit below that. Those do change over time. And for instance, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've added in a 6th value that relates more strongly to sustainability within the community, and it relates much more strongly towards inclusivity and diversity amongst everybody that works in the business, and in fact for our customers as well. So there's those do change with time a little bit, but the 5 values that we started out with, they're still there, they're still important, and then you have to take the values and then you need to bring them to life. And then you come into what we've used is how we do business statements. So it's all very well saying we give great customer service, but what does that mean? It's just, again, those are just words on the wall, on a piece of paper, or in a document. But what is great customer service? What does acting with honesty and integrity? What does that mean? What does promoting our staff to contribute to the best of their abilities to the what do all those things mean? They're great values, so you have to go into the next step, which is how do you bring those to life and make them come about. And I'm pleased that a lot of the work that we've done over the last 15 years has been in that, very much in that area. It's been putting structures there, and we've had to think about how we manage the business. Do we want to be a command-led structure, or do we want to be more inclusive and democratic? And we've decided that we've wanted to be the second.
And how have you done that? What can you tell us about how you've brought those things to life?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to nail your colours to the mast. You've got to tell everybody this is what we stand for, and then tell everybody this is what we stand for, and then deal with exceptions, and you'll find that then there becomes a natural process. And that's where we started the very big programme now of leading the Blakemore Way. And our wish and you never quite catch up enough here, but our wish is that anybody who works in Blakemore's, who's got responsibility for other people working within the team, they should have attended the Leading the Blakemore Way course, which states what our tools and techniques are that we use to enable them to deliver our values and purpose.
So you nailed your colour to the mast. You defined something called Leading the Blakemore Way. You really just went out and said, if you've got responsibility for people, this is a sort of an ethos of leadership that we want you to embody. But then you didn't just leave it at that. You developed the tools and techniques, and you gave people the practical assistance to actually live that way in the day-to-day. You know, for example, in how they communicate with others, how they hold conversations, or how they run performance reviews, or how they hold meetings, and create that. So you really went into the structure of how leadership happens, if I understand it.
Yeah, right. Very much. But I think one of the things we've learned, particularly in the last few years, is that there isn't a system that's it. You have to teach your people and all your staff that they need to be flexible, and they need to use different sort of management styles according to the times. So we've just gone through a pretty horrible few years with COVID, supply chain crises, inflation, war in Europe, and you don't really want to be spending all your time talking to your management team about how they make decisions. They need to get on and deal with the problems that are happening there. So again, the balance, they have to be aware of what's going on and how it works, but the balance and the combination of techniques that they should use, in those circumstances, when COVID first came, most people were told to work from home. I had to. And so it means that you can't use the old techniques that you had. You have to empower people more, delegate more people, but you need to empower them to be active and deal with the day-to-day problems as they occur. And it's been a big change, I think, for a lot of companies over the last few years.
So this is very much, it's not command and control, is it? It's like working in unpredictable. I mean, who'd have guessed 5 years ago that we'd be able to have a conversation sitting here where you'd say, we've come through a pandemic, we've come through double-digit inflation. Let's say come through, we're still in it. That we're talking here as there's a war in Europe. I mean, these things are so unpredictable. Or VUCA is the phrase that's used, isn't it? Volatile, unpredictable, complex, ambiguous. That's the world we live in. You're saying you really wanting to empower leaders to make choices and to be adaptable in that. Can you give us a flavour of how you've done it? What have you got? Some examples of when you're talking about leading the Blakemore way, or a simple way of saying that, bringing your purpose and values to life each day in each interaction. Can you give us a sense of how you're equipping leaders to do that?
I think the experience that they had over COVID is that people they had no other choice but they had to decide how they were going to keep themselves personally safe, because to start with, no one knew where this was going to end. They had to keep themselves personally safe. They had to keep their customers safe, because we supply food, which is an everyday, daily essential. So we can't all work from home. We have to be there assembling orders for shops. We have to be putting the goods into our stores and getting in customers into our stores, enabling them to purchase their everyday needs in a safe and reliable environment. And that requires a huge amount of teaching people, I think, the principles of what to do and how to do things in particular. But then in the end, we do rely upon delegation of a lot of our staff to to bring us through these difficult times. And COVID was hard work. The supply chain crisis was even harder. We found that after COVID, Brexit, end of furlough, we have about 300 truck drivers in our business, and because of shortages, you weren't able to train up any of your own because all the test centres were closed. So there were no new drivers coming through. And out of our 300, I think we had a shortfall of 80 at the worst. And these are 80 people that we needed just to get keep the supply chain of everyday food and drink flowing right through to the society. And so you tend to look at things in a different way when you've gone through that experience. You really do.
And one of the things I know from your leading the Blakemore way is you actually train people to manage their state, don't you? So that when these events are happening that are unpredictable and difficult and really challenging, that actually there's a leader over here who is managing their state so that they can respond to these issues and not panic and not get fearful. And I mean, you've actually really invested in that level, don't you, so that your leaders can respond to the unpredictable.
Very much so, very, very much so. It's a very important part of our leading the Blakemore way, in that we need the management team, and in fact everybody that works in the business, is to work together collectively to produce solutions for unknown and changing problems that can occur every single day. You know, and when I say occur every day, you get crazy things like we've had 10, we talked about drivers earlier, we've had 15 drivers this week gone down with COVID. It was never as bad as that, but there were those sorts of numbers, and so we'd have 10 less people to deal with, so they then have to find a way of changing the business and the model to make it work and run smoothly. So these things needed to have, I think, good collective working together teams to get everybody through these very big changes that we've had. COVID and supply chain, shortages of people, shortages of they're well known, shortages of staff to do basic jobs that are required for society, with a pandemic going on at the same time. That's a big challenge. But our team, I think that leading the Blakemore way training, so that they could dispassionately find out what the issues were, work with other people, find solutions, communicate those solutions to customers. Customers understand what's happening at store level, and the shop owners that we supply. They know what's happening, but they need to be informed. There are problems with shortages or something like that. If you can ring up really well in advance, say, yes, we've got some problems, but this is what we're doing about it, and that your order will be 2 hours later than it normally is on this day, or even half a day later than what then you keep them informed, and everybody's then happy and worked together to getting into a better place.
I mean, it really makes sense. I mean, the thing about retail is it's so dynamic, isn't it? I mean, I'm listening to you here going, wow, I mean, that world you live in, every day there's things coming at you. But the thing I've found really amazing about, what you do with leading the Blakemore way is, of course, when these challenges are happening, the temptation is for all the attention to go out and solve the problem, isn't it? But with leading the Blakemore way, you have people come in first and actually manage their internal state, manage their mind, develop a purpose, and then come out to solve the problem. So it's sort of like an inner first and then an outer, isn't it? And you've been doing that for 15, 20 years with all your leaders. And if I recall right, Peter, you were the first. You weren't the last to take this training. You were the first to take this training. And so I'm curious as to how if you've got something to tell us about how that's affected you and the way you lead and the way you manage your own state when all these challenges and even crises are swirling around you and swirling around the business.
Well, I think if you face a crisis that comes in from the environment towards you, is that your attitude towards that crisis is really important. And that it's very easy to rush around madly and to try and do things. And the fact that through a lot of the work that we've done, we've all grown accustomed to actually, before we rush off and solve it, just take a deep breath, have a few thoughts, enable people to we call it temperature check, to do their own temperature check. Just to it can be done in a minute, and that can be shared amongst a group of people, and we found it's a very useful technique to enable us to start to get higher level or good levels of performance from working in teams. Is to have everybody having the same language in this area, first of all, and secondly, the means and the ability to communicate with each other about how they're feeling, or they can say, yeah, I'm here to sort this out, but you know what, I've got this awful problem somewhere else that really is eating me away. And then you've got the choice then. You can actually say to somebody, well, look, let's spend a bit of time on this other problem of yours. Then you can be more effective dealing with this other matter that we've got together as a team today. Or we could even say to somebody, look, I think you ought to go and solve that problem, or you've got an issue there you need to look at. So the rest of us can manage the whatever it is that we need to talk about today, and do it effectively, rather than having somebody who's not fully there and they've got other thoughts going on and worries and concerns going on at the same time.
Your approach is very human-centric, isn't it? It's like it really acknowledges each person and where they're at. And then I think the amazing thing is, as you're saying it, is you've created a common language and collectivized something which I think most businesses don't do. You collectivize that way of saying, right, let's all of us be in a state in which we can give our best to this problem. And that might include, like you say, you take a temperature check, you take some breath, you manage your state, and then you come into the problem, which might mean actually that some people in the team who would be in a more reactive state actually step out for a minute rather than pouring that anxiety or that fear or that distraction, as you described in your example, into the problem, which doesn't help solve the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, we found it very helpful. I think that we've been action orientated in the last few years. And as a company, I think we're just starting again. That we've been rushing around for 3 years, and I didn't mention in the middle of this, we opened up a giant new warehouse where in an area of the country in Bedford where we'd never been and traded before as a logistics centre. And we opened up this right in the middle of the supply chain crisis. We didn't know this was coming. It was 4 years coming, and we suddenly needed 250 people to make this place work, and we had nobody there at all. And so these again were massive changes that we had to go through, and challenges that we had to meet. So I think that the methods that we've used to bring people together, they take time and they do need to be reinforced. And I think that that's something that we're particularly looking at doing now. So we've got new ideas, we've got, we know where we want to move the business to next. And I think we want to just reinforce and make sure that our base and the methods that we use are reinvigorated. So I think these things, they all come in cycles. And so I think we're in a reinvigoration and going back to the basics again, putting out exactly what we mean by these things. And the rate of change of people is huge. In the middle of the supply chain crisis, we would find that we got retention rates of 20%. So, and by that, we measure how many people working for us today were working for us a year ago. And in some of the operations, we'd say, well, actually, of all the people that worked for us a year ago, we've only got 20% left now. The others have changed, and you get a churn anyhow.
Yeah.
So I think there's a time now that we need to come back to what we've been doing over the last 15 years, reinforcing it. It's very strong. I think, as I mentioned earlier, that we've trained over 1,500 people in these techniques, and I think we need to, again, just to reinvigorate it, and I think we'll get some real benefits from that. And the world's changing out there. I think as I said again earlier, I think some of the things that we're doing are becoming much more important to society as a whole.
Yeah. And underneath all that, I mean, I hear that sort of constant commitment to leadership, and that changes over time, but it's sort of like you need to keep at it, don't you? It's not something you do and you tick and then you move on, particularly as your leadership populations can shift.
That's right.
But underneath it all, coming back to something you said earlier, one of the foundations of Blakemore's is you've got this purpose, and I do want to come back to it because I was really noticing as you said the purpose out again, which I hadn't heard for a while, and it's something hearing it from you actually, is that it just really struck me as that although it's very vogue to talk about multi-stakeholder approach to business, you've had that for decades. I mean, and your purpose is explicitly multi-stakeholder, isn't it? It's, you know, you talk about growing a profitable and sustainable business for the benefit of our staff, our customers, and the communities that we serve. I mean, you're very, very explicit, aren't you, in your purpose of naming the different stakeholders that matter to you.
Yes, indeed. And but that doesn't change. And that's the beauty of a family business, I think.
Yeah, that you can do that without the shareholder pressure external.
That's right, we can do that. Yeah. I think we just need to be very mindful that all of these ideas and methods and techniques, we still live in a hard commercial world.
Yeah.
In that,
and there's not many worlds that are more tough than retail. I mean, it's notorious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tight margins, detail, speed, changes. You know, it really is a world that needs that strong commercial focus.
It does.
Otherwise, you don't last 5 minutes in that world.
And again, there are changes, but I think that we're in a strong position as a company now. We've gone through some very big changes in the environment. There's a couple of things that have happened on this. First of all, I think that there is a lot more interest in sustainability, diversity, inclusivity, bringing people together than there ever has been in the past. And secondly, I have to say that I think the attitude towards capital and cash is having to change with high inflation. I think it's been very, I won't use the word easy, but it's been very possible for big financial engineering projects to take place when you've got such a large supply of very, very cheap money available to make these changes happen. Now, we're in a different environment now. You know, the cost of cash, cost of borrowing is hugely more expensive than what it has been. So again, I think we need to compete within a different and a changed environment, And as a family-owned business, we have made, we reinvest 94% of any surplus cash that we make. And so we can grow our own money, but it's becoming more important for us to compete more strongly in the future than perhaps we've done in the past. However, I think we're in a great position to be able to do exactly that for the next generation. I think they'll have a great opportunity there.
Your optimism shines through, Peter. I'm sure you're right. I mean, can you say, some of the people watching this are going to be going through their own thought processes about how they create multi-stakeholder capitalist models in their own companies. Some of them are going to be family business, some of them are not, with traditional market pressures. And to name it, businesses like yours, whilst they're not one-offs, you're still not the mainstream. I mean, classic shareholder capitalism is still the mainstream in Western European and US economies. I mean, that is the mainstream. So you are what we call in our business a pioneer of purpose-led business. I mean, you've been doing it for decades, but you're out front. And I'm just wondering if you could spend some time talking to the viewers about some of what you've learned about managing a multi-stakeholder approaches, what challenges you face in that, what trade-offs you face in that make it sustainable in a very commercial environment that you're working in. How do you trade those things off, or is it a trade-off? Or is it that they can work together in a way that supports each other? I mean, what have you learned about that over the decades?
Well, I think the balance changes all the time. And I think being a family business, we've been able to take a patient capital approach to life, in that we've been around for over 100 years now. We want to be around as an entity, carrying on doing what we're doing now for another 100 years. So that's quite a different motivation to a lot of other companies. However, I accept, and I think that the hard commerciality and the power of capital has changed so much over the last few years, in that we need to be able to survive and compete against competitors, because that's what it's all about. Can we survive against all the competitors we've got out there, and can we give a real great service to our customers, meet their needs and wishes? So I think we've got to really focus in on those two things. I think the balance is changing. I think we do need to become, as this is perhaps in our development, the business, family business, started off with my grandparents, my father, myself. And I think in the future, I think that the commerciality and return that we get, that we have huge opportunities, I think, to grow our own business, grow our own capital through increasing and improving our profits. So that's really how the balance changes, and I think it'll continue to change as well in the future. And you can see it almost every week in the press, particularly in food retailing and wholesaling. There's some big changes happening continually and all the time. And as a company, it's important that we all identify these changes, adapt, to enable us to do the job better in the future than we've done in the past. And that requirement will change on a monthly, yearly basis.
And that requirement for you to grow your profitability and to generate cash within that has been, a mainstay of your business. Can you say more about what does your purpose of benefiting staff and benefiting customers and benefiting communities, you know, that's all right to write in the will. How do you do that in the will? How does that come to life?
Well, I think first of all is that it depends how you treat your staff. So I want the company, Blakemore's, to be a place of work that I'm proud of, that they're all collectively proud to be part of and working in the business. Like, we've got work to do, we always have, and I think we've got massive opportunities to become infinitely better and improve in that area. So the people within the business, we've got great opportunities for further improvement. I think the service that we give to our customers, be they trade customers or members of the public, but buying something to put on the table tonight or to eat now or something for lunch, that is changing all the time, and we need to be really alive to that and improving that, and we need to be faster and nimbler than our competitors, and that's the way I think we're going to pull all of this together and survive and grow in the future.
Do you think if your sole, I think I need to ask you this question, maybe this sort of cynical question. Do you think if your sole focus had been on profit, that you would have made more money?
Yes, I think it would. I think we probably would, yeah. But we would have been operating a business in ways in which I perhaps wouldn't want it to have lived in and done. I think that, again, you've got to get the right balance between making money. We're a family business, but we're dependent upon finance from our bankers and other lenders. We're dependent upon finance and support from all of the suppliers that we deal with, and support from our customers as well. So we need to keep everybody there, all working together. So I think we could have made more as a bottom line, but what would the purpose of that be? It wouldn't be, would that be for my benefit then? Probably would. And if I'd have wanted that, maybe I could have done that. But, you know, how many Rolls Royces do you want? And how many villas in?
Well, the answer to that question for you, Peter, is 0, because we all know what car you drive. that Mini that you got as a young guy, it's sort of gone downhill from you car-wise since then, hasn't it?
Oh no, I've done all right. I've been very fortunate in having some very nice motor cars to drive around in. And,
but you don't drive a roller.
I don't drive a roller, no, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
But I've got, there are other sort of, you know, we're talking cars now, aren't we? I mean, I've been very fortunate to be able to have a choice of cars that have fitted my personality,
yeah,
and have fitted what I like. And I enjoy driving,
yeah,
and I enjoy going from A to B, and I enjoy doing it in a nice machine that does the job superbly well.
yeah.
That's not a Rolls Royce for me. You know, to start with, it was a Mini Cooper S, which was and I've perhaps gone that way. I've still got a 23-year-old sports car, so an old Honda.
No,
so I'm very proud of that, and I love driving it.
We've slipped into the world of cars, which is easy for me to do, but I mean, coming back to what you were saying, I think it was very sort of, I could feel the energy of it, where you said, well, I could have made more money, but what would have been the purpose in that? And there's clearly, that would not have been a meaningful result for you. It would not have been satisfying for you. Personally, as Peter Blakemore,
that's right.
It wouldn't have sat with you.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have sat with you because...
Well, I'd be a different person. I really would be a different person. You know, the things I enjoy in life, family, friends, I enjoy. I'm very lucky. You know, I have a very high standard of living. Compared with many people. You know, but it's not stupid. Yeah. So I'm afraid I don't have any Rolls Royces or yachts or things like that. But we live happily, and we live comfortably and well. And I'm pleased to say that the whole family is sort of behind this, really.
Yeah.
They think I was mad if I went out and started buying myself toys at my age, you know. Yeah.
Which is another way of saying that you've run the business true to who you are. You know, you've run it true to who you are and your values. And, you know, through that, profit has been really important to keep the business moving, to keep it growing, to keep investing, and keep the company with that solid base. But you've done that, and you being you've done that alongside really valuing the people who are there, their diversity, the opportunities that you give them, really focusing on what your customers want.
Yeah.
And then the other bit that's in your purpose statement is the community. I mean, I'm just curious, how does Blakemore operate in ways that are to the benefit of the community?
Well, we run local shops, so we're in a special place, I think, in terms of community, in that our SPAR stores, they're all part of the everyday lives of a lot of all of our customers, and large numbers of the members of the community come into our stores. So we are embedded in the community. I said that we retain 94% of the profits that we make, and that we pay about 2% of our profits go directly into a foundation that we've got, and that money's used to. It's small scale stuff, so there won't be a wing on a nursing home or a hospital with our name on it, but we do get involved with community activities. So if somebody wants to raise money for a good cause, we'll help them do that, because we give them a raffle prize, or we give them something that they can use to get leverage for whatever they're looking for. So we put, so we have a financial interest. Our own staff, we have a very big volunteering program, so we allow all of our staff to go and work within the community on whatever's required within that. And of course, with nearly 300 stores, we're pretty diverse across England and Wales, where our shops are based. So we're strongly based in the community. And we do rely on the community for our trade. They could be, if they were not supporting us as a business and our customers, and when I say our customers, our independent retailers, the majority of our shops are run and operated by other members that are embedded within the community where they trade. They own the shop. So they're the local shop owner, and they're part of the fabric of the societies where they live and work. And COVID's been a great learning curve for us, and that our own stores, and in particular independent retailers that we supply, who are part of the community, they've been there looking after people, making deliveries for them, looking after the older people in the community, and getting goods and whatever they want to them to get them through, and working together.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really get that sense of, you're there, your stores are integral to community life, but your ethos is not about sort of like taking from that community, but being a part of it. Giving back to it, you give a percentage of your profits to it. Your staff are very engaged in volunteering with it. You support local causes. So it's very much in the ethos of what is a family business, and it started as a family business, and it seems to me that you look to retain that sense. I mean, you're in more areas than just where the local shop was in Wolverhampton, but in a sense, it's the same local shop, but just in 300 different locations.
Mm. And we're doing different things. Customers' needs change now. When I first started work, the amount of most family meals were prepared from basic ingredients, and they were assembled together and cooked on a daily basis.
Mm.
Whereas the way the market's changed and evolved is that very large numbers of people now, they go to work and they go out at lunchtime to buy a sandwich to have during the lunch hour, and they have food and snacks on the go. Whereas many years ago, nobody would have thought of doing that. That was a terrible extravagance. Mm. If you wanted a sandwich at lunchtime, you made it before you went out to work and put it in a little box and in your rucksack, and that was the way it's done. And now the requirement, I think, of easy prepared foods that can be done without huge amounts of time spent on it. Mm. And this is a generality, but that requirement has grown very much so over the years.
Yeah. I mean, here's the interesting thing that occurs to me. I mean, I've often had the thought that one of the things about purpose-led organisations is their relationship with time. Mm. You said it, very family business. You had a very patient approach to capital, and I mean, I wonder the paradox of this. You may have made more profit short term, but I wonder if you'd still be in existence in the longer term. Mm. Because if you're driving that sort of profit machine, you're going to be more tempted to be bought. You're going to create less customer loyalty, less people loyalty. I just wonder if that's the part of it, Peter, on reflection, that you may have taken like a 1, 2, 5 year where you could say, actually, I think we could have probably made more profit in that time. But over 100 years and looking to another 100 years, the paradox is that the short-term profit actually doesn't translate into long-term sustainability or long-term foundation for what is. Your business is essentially a community business, isn't it? Mm. You exist in multiple communities with the goodwill of those communities and the goodwill of the people who work in the company. Mm.
The returns that we could have made, would that have enabled us to have done that, made bigger and better returns, and still maintain our values? Or what we stand for, and my own personal values and integrity, and that's I don't know. Mm. I don't know whether I could have done that. I suspect you get corrupted, and that you put more value on these, on these areas where I've probably got less regard, and I think that would have destroyed my personal purpose.
Yeah. No, that comes through really strongly in the interview. Actually, that sense, the bottom line for you is, this is who I am. I've run this business according to my values, and in a way, I couldn't have done it another way. That's me being authentic to me. Now, that comes across to me as almost like the essential part of your story. I suppose I'm curious about people watching who aren't in family businesses, and they're thinking, I've got this stock market pressure. I can't even take the 5-year view. I'm delivering quarterly results. And something about, how do I manage this multi-stakeholder approach when I'm compelled to keep delivering quarterly results? I mean, have you got anything to say to them?
Well, Well, I think I understand that. And it doesn't mean to say that you have to act in unethical and wrong ways. You can still produce improvements every quarter. I mean, there's a strong pressure in our business to keep performing. If we have a sustained period of not making our numbers and profits, we're going to get bankers calling in loans. So we do have those pressures on us. We don't perhaps have the shareholder pressures that other companies have. However, I think you can still you can marry the two together. In that, I think you can definitely run strong, profitable businesses in the right way and in the right ethical way as well. It's just that maybe being as a family business, there haven't been the same pressures upon me and upon the business to perform at those levels. So I don't think it has to be sort of values or profit. It's not a straight choice between. I think you can have both. And it's perhaps where the emphasis is and where the where all the attention gets put. I really don't think they're exclusive.
No, I don't either. And actually, other people who we've interviewed have been quite categorical to say that they believe they actually support each other, particularly in the longer run.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, that sort of fits in all right there, then, doesn't it?
I didn't ask you in it, Peter. We talked about purpose without actually inviting you to define what it is. I mean, what do you think? How do you define purposes? You've been working with it for 20 years or more. What's your way of encapsulating its meaning?
I'd say a purpose is having an understanding within yourself or an organisation as to what you want to be in the future and how you're going to change and how you're going to affect change to achieve the goals and objectives that you set yourself.
So you talk about it very much in terms of what gets created in the future.
Very much so, yeah. But that's the nature of the sort of area in which we trade, in that we're not a business that's in a solidified or fossilized situation. In that the rate of change that I've seen and that is still happening now in commerce as a whole means that you do need to be able to look to the future. You do need to be able to predict where you need to change and what you need to do in the future. And I think purpose is a great driver to enable you to realise that future that you want, rather than having it done to you by the market, because it will.
Yeah. I mean, in that sense, as you define it, I think I might call that more a vision than a purpose. It's a picture of the future. It's something that you see out there.
They go together, I think. If you've got purpose without a vision, what's the purpose of the purpose? So I think it shows you where you want to go and what you want to be. And then it enables you to put in place what you need to get there.